There's more to you than just being a groomer. You have unlimited potential inside waiting to be discovered. Whether you've been a groomer for one day or one lifetime, there are so many skills we aren't taught. Handling and scissoring are only part of it. You want to be successful in business and in life, but to do that, you have to have the right mindset and some business savvy know-how. I'm your host, Cassondra, fear-free certified professional groomer, owner-founder of Club Posh, and pet pro with Pottery. On this podcast, you'll hear from industry professionals and groomers just like you on tips, vulnerable stories, and valuable lessons learned that have helped them through challenging times. Compassion fatigue and the effects of manual labor are real, so it's crucial you have the tools to make the life you deserve. And you can, because you are unlimited. Let's tap into that now. Good morning. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Unlimited Groomer. Now let's connect. For inspiration and motivation, follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Unlimited Groomer. For information on receiving coaching or for opportunities for speaking and workshop engagements, send an email over to unlimitedgroomer@gmail.com. As always, keep going. Anything is possible because you are unlimited. Welcome to another episode of the Unlimited Groomer, where not only am I encouraging you to be your best groomer self, but also be your best self in general and really expand your career off into the horizons that you didn't think were possible before. And there's so many different avenues, and from our providers to our mentors and everything, and then all these other types of businesses in between that can really help prolong our careers and help us blow up, and even if you're not trying to blow up, just be a healthier, have a longer career. So I'm really excited. Excuse me. I'm really excited to welcome my next guest today. Her name is Aimee Takaya of Free Your Soma, and you might have heard about somatic breathing. That when I met her, that was pretty much the extent of what I knew. Somatic breathing. Didn't even know, and she'll explain what soma actually is. Didn't even know about that. I was just like, okay, it's some kind of holistic breath technique. Cool. Do it when I'm anxious. Got it. And I didn't dive any deeper. And this is all of Aimee's thing. And I was really fortunate to go to one of her workshops recently. And I think I'm still kind of recovering from, I think that's where all this comes from. I'm still recovering from what emoted from my body that I released during that. And it was like the most easy thing. If you've done my groomer yoga before and you thought that was easy, it gets easier. So welcome, Aimee.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, when I first discovered this movement practice, I had no idea what the word somatic meant either. And even during my training, I was kind of like, they kept talking about, oh, how are you experiencing this somatically? And I didn't totally know what that was. I was like, what does that really mean? And it wasn't until I did a training at the Novato Institute in somatic education to learn this body work and to learn this movement practice, and teach it. But then I did a somatic yoga training, and previously I'd been a yoga teacher, right? I did a somatic yoga training, and it was in that training with Eleanor Criswell Hanna, my mentor, that I really discovered what somatics meant. And so I'm going to give just a little brief, less intellectual, more practical explanation. And then I can go into the intellectual piece too. But basically, she shared with me this formula called PIES. And it's an acronym that stands for physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. And there are these different layers of our awareness and our consciousness that we can actually check in with. And so that's what the PIES formula is and was. So in that training, we would check in with our PIES. How are you doing physically? How are you doing intellectually, right? Like what's going on in your head? How are you doing emotionally? How are you doing spiritually? And what that all adds up to is how you are doing somatically. Because your soma isn't just your body, it is your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, your spirit, your energy field. It's like this much more complete word for what your physical body actually contains.
And I love how I love that you explained it that way, because that is just like, if people stop listening beyond this, which I don't know why you would, but if you did, just that PIES, I hope that that's awesome. And when you were at the half day retreat, when you were explaining Soma a little bit more in detail, because we have more time, about what I got from it was, I mean, you explained it perfectly, but like just your essence, your being, like you were talking about, like it's not just your blood, your guts, your body, all of that, but like, and I think especially in the groomer field, we tend to not take up a lot of space, especially women in general, for generations, like shrink, be small, don't be loud, don't be audacious. And that comes with not just our physical being, but also our, like our energy field, like you said, our aura. And I know our listeners relate because we work with energy every single day with the animals. And so to just keep, I like the idea. I don't know if you said it. My grandma always talked about having a bubble around me. And it just kind of, however I move, like it's in that field. It's, you know, probably a 1.5 foot extension. And so if we start thinking about our whole selves with like just add a foot and a half all around, you know, like that's your soma. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it also goes the other way. It goes inward too, because it's also your nervous system. And when you're working with animals, yes, you're working with their energy fields, but you're also working nervous system to nervous system with another living being. And honestly, with another soma, because dogs and cats and birds and plants and even the planet Earth could be described as a soma. It's a living experiential being with memories, you know, and you know, DNA is a form of memory, right? It's like what's been carried on, as you said, from generation to generation, the conditioning that we've gone through, but also our potential, right? And so it's all there in our DNA for people who have heard about like epigenetic expression, right?
Genetics.
Yes. So that to me is like your potential, getting, you know, potential for illness, potential for health, potential for greatness, potential for the smallest life you could possibly live, where you take up the least amount of space, right? It's all in there in your epigenetic expression. And your epigenetic expression is totally related to the habits and behaviors and the environment that you are in, right? That you are day in, day out exposed to or creating for yourself, consciously or unconsciously, which is why things like, you know, mindfulness practices, meditation, yes, they're good for your nervous system. They're also good for your epigenetic expression, right? Because those things aren't separate.
And if someone's listening to this going like, oh, you're kind of talking about fate and I can't change that, what would you say to that? Because I'm of the mindset of like, yes and no, but like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I kind of think of it, and this gets a little bit into like the, you know, I guess, multiverse, like quantum possibility conversation here, if you're into that. Yeah, people are talking about it more because of that really cool movie that came out, so they're getting it more. But let's think about if you have a fate or a destiny, right? That, well, let's just say for the sake of argument, is predetermined, right? And it's right over here, and you're here. It doesn't have to be from point A to point B, and this is how you get there.
I take all the scenic routes.
Right. There are a multitude of different pathways that can get you to the same point. And that's where free will comes in. Our free will is our choosing in each moment, right? But if we get in touch with, and, you know, maybe instead of the word fate or destiny, we could talk about like purpose. Like, what's the purpose of my life? What am I here to do? What really speaks to my soul? What is like the bigger meaning? And for some people listening, like that may very well be interconnected with animals, right? It may be very much interconnected with, you know, these other species that we spend, you know, a lot of time with, you know, and part of your destiny, part of your purpose involves, you know, being in that connection with them. And I'd say that, you know, our purpose doesn't have to be just one thing. Like, what if this destination we call fate is also kind of this multifaceted, layered, you know, kind of shifting, you know, changing thing. It's fixed, but it's also like malleable, right? Like anything in the universe. So as you're going along, it's like, yeah, you get to make these little micro choices, and then big choices that, you know, take you down these different, you know, possible places to get to the same destination over time. And I'd say a lot of times when we feel really stuck or we feel really like lost, it's because we've lost that sense of direction of like, our purpose. Now, that doesn't mean that we're actually lost. This could have been like a necessary detour that we just don't see like why at the time, right?
Hindsight 2020, blah blah, but for
Right.
real. Yeah. So I love that. And just a little like closing note on that before we move into what we came here to talk about. But I mean, I nerd out on this stuff too. So, but often I think so. Imposter syndrome runs rampant. I mean, it's a epidemic in today's world anyway, and especially among women. And of course, I have a lot of male listeners as well, but there's a majority of female identifying people in the grooming industry. And just we often think of like purpose, like, oh, it's got to be some like big thing, and like your purpose could be like the best partner ever, or like the best groomer, and not even like grooming skills wise, like show award winning, but like your purpose could be like to just show up and bring positivity to the animals I work with, or make somebody's day just a little bit better. So it's not like, because we get intimidated and we're like, oh man, well that's not for me, or that's I could never. And it's like your purpose doesn't have to be some like gigantic platform change the world. Like we're all changing lives and worlds every single day. Your purpose could be that, and that doesn't make it any less than anyone else's. And because we all matter, and everyone listening, you all matter. So yeah, I just went there.
Yeah, it's true.
So when we're talking Soma specifically and tying all that together, because that really is like, when I met you and we started having a conversation, I was like, hey, I've been doing personal development work for a couple of decades now, and I feel like I'm at this like glass ceiling, and I've been feeling like there's a piece to my development missing that I can't quite tap into. And I'm like, okay, maybe I need to, start talking with a psychologist, which that's not off the table. I'm still searching for one, but like, okay, maybe I need to do that. Maybe there's something physical. And I met our friend Lana, and I was like, okay, I've known about Reiki for a while. Maybe there's that. And then I meet you and I'm like, oh, no, I think that's the missing layer. So let's put this together now. Like, where does that come into play with helping us release past issues, helping us reach our potential? Like, let's go into that.
Yes. Okay. So specifically, the form of somatic education that I do is called HANA somatics. And what we do is we use a nervous system function in your body, and honestly, in your doggy's body too. It's seen in all vertebrates, this nervous system function. And what this nervous system function is the way that your body releases muscle memory, which builds up otherwise. And it is a natural thing that our autonomic, meaning we don't have to think about it, we naturally do it, right? One very good example is yawning. When you yawn, you are contracting the muscles that open your mouth, and then you're slowly releasing them. And your dogs and cats do this all the time. They contract and then slowly release. And we call it a stretch, but I don't know if they're actually experiencing a stretching sensation, but I do know what they're doing neurophysiologically, which is that they are contracting a group of muscles and then very slowly relaxing them. And then there's a little pause before they might repeat it. And they usually do the opposing muscle group. They do the other side. And we all did this, right? You've seen your dogs do this, right?
Yeah.
Cats do it. We did it when we were in the womb. Babies are observed doing this in the womb. When you wake up in the morning and you do like that big stretch, right? Is it a stretch, or is it a contraction of your back and shoulder muscles and the slow letting go of them, right? So it's this nervous system function that, I say release muscle memory. Well, with every experience that we went through in life, whether it was, some kind of childhood humiliation, or whether it was actual, like physical abuse, or whether it was, a breakup or a divorce or, car accident, that all came with a muscular impact. Maybe some of you have noticed that when you get stressed out, oh my God, I'm clenching my jaw really tight. My shoulders are up by my ears. Exactly. My stomach is engaged. I'm feeling sick to my stomach, right? Those are all part of how we experience stress, right? And or trauma is in our physical body as a muscular reaction. Now, when we live in a stress state, when we're maintaining fight or flight, like ongoingly, we don't do this pendiculating. That's what the word is. I'll say it, pendiculating. So it's what the dog and the cat are doing when they arch their back and slowly let it go. We stop doing that when we're stressed. We also stop doing it when we're sick. And so what ends up happening to humans, it can also happen to dogs and other animals, is that they hold on to the muscle pattern. They hold on to the muscle memory. And it not only confines their physical body, like keeps everything tight, right? But it also keeps the loop of whatever happened in the past playing out unconsciously.
Which explains so much about reactivity. Like if we're talking about dogs, like they have like I work with I do grooming rehab. So I work with a lot of dogs that have past triggers, and it's the same pattern of reactivity until we learn to like trust and create new neurological pathways. But it's the same series of events, or even like with us, we're repeating the same things over and over. Like, oh, you'll always act that way. And a lot of people are just like, well, that's just the way I am. Or that's how you've learned to be.
Yes, to
think
survive.
that's who you are. Yeah. So love my future mother-in-law. I really, really do. And she's the most, if you all could meet her, she is the most ideal expression of a human that is constantly in victim mode. You can go to her, and we spent the first hour of Thanksgiving. She has a galley kitchen before you actually go into like into the rest of the house and the sitting area. And we literally spent the first hour standing in the galley kitchen. Happy Thanksgiving. And she's talking about how she had this terrible, which we've heard the story before, this terrible Thanksgiving years and years and years ago as a child. So like she's not only, and of course, obviously she has a lot of health issues, challenges as well, which they go, I come from a family of doctors, and they always said stress is cancer. It will cause it, like, because of what's going on in the body. But all of this to say, like, my poor future mother-in-law, it doesn't matter what good stuff you bring to her, she has on loop past childhood trauma with her mother specifically, like over and over. And so she's the most like, and we probably all know those people that we like, anything, it doesn't matter, the happiest news, and they're like, oh great, when I was a kid, rah 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 rah, and you're like, okay. So like that's a very like a very pendulum swing representation of what you're talking about. Most of us are kind of in this like internal, we don't even know that we're talking shit about ourselves, but we are, and like that kind of,
absolutely, yes. And so her body never got a chance to let go or come out of those stress states. Her body's been maintaining them. And I completely understand, because my body was doing that too a lot for a long time. And how it's expressed in me, instead of being cancer, was just chronic pain, right? Chronic pain in our limbs. Now, these somatic techniques that I practice, they can be done with animals. My cousin is really great with dogs, right? And he actually does dog somatics, and he's very good at working with dogs. He's in California, but very interesting. Yeah. And then there's actually a training through the Novato Institute, which is where I was trained, that they work specifically with horses. And one of my other cousins did that training. So these same principles of show your body. Okay. So how it works is, like, say in the case of your mother-in-law, something happened. There's a pain pattern. We can describe it: mental, emotional, also probably physical. She may or may not be aware of it physically. That's clenching her, that has her repeating that same reality over and over. Right now, a lot of times what we try to do is we try to make that stop. We're just like, do not do that anymore. Stop, bad dog, right? And we try to make the change now and do a whole 180. Now that doesn't work. And if you're feeling upset, right? And I'm just like, well, you shouldn't feel upset, feel better, right? We call that gaslighting, right? What we really need, what your mother-in-law needs, what everybody needs, is they need validation. And we can provide that on a neuromuscular level by going with the pattern. So if the pattern is my shoulders shrug up towards my ears, it feels like my chest is collapsing, and I'm experiencing a lot of sadness, right? Now, what I did for years is try to rip it open, do all those heart openers in yoga, stretch it out, pull on it, right? That's not how our bodies release. Our bodies release through support and love and validation. Same with animals. If you just force a dog to, can you? If a dog is all, overwhelmed? No, You have to soothe them. You have to be kind to them. You have to be gentle. Our bodies are no different. So the technique is go with the pattern. Your mother-in-law and you go, oh, wow, you're feeling so like angry about that still. I hear how angry you are. You know, it sounds like you had every right to be angry. You know, that might be on a verbal or emotional level, how you might like soothe a person like that. But then if she were to do somatic movement, it would be like, oh, your shoulders don't want to go back. It pulls, it's tight. Okay, let's bring your shoulders forward. Let's even put a pillow underneath your shoulders so they can rest in that curled forward position.
As opposed to physically contracting in the stress pattern, allow them to be there with support.
Or with feedback.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I do in the body work is like, it can be support that helps. The muscles already start to loosen when they're supported, or I have them go into it. I'm like, okay, your shoulder wants to come forward, push into my hand. And the person pushes forward, and it usually feels really good. It feels really good to do what your body wants to do. Your body's like, oh yeah, I've been wanting to push forward. You've been making me stretch and pull back, but like, I want to go forward. Right. And then you have them really slowly release that just as much as they can. And then you have that support behind there, and you invite them to relax at the end of the movement. And you experience this on your own, right? Mm-hmm. But in the body work, right, or with the more interactive way of doing this, they're getting that feedback. Oh, you want to contract? Oh, you want to push then. You know, you want to express, you want to tell me how much like your life sucks right now? Tell me, tell me about it, get it out. Don't hold it in. Like a lot of like when kind of going back to imposter syndrome, like a lot of us carry shame about like our feelings and what we experience, like who am I to, want the kind of life that I want, or who am I to like have this big feeling, and oh, I'm acting like a victim. Stop that. Right. But what we really need is to just have that validation, that support, that love. And that's what somatic education, this specific modality, it does this on a neurophysiological level, that the person's body starts to remember how to relax and how to soften and how to open.
You're like my new favorite person, for real. Like it's like, for real, like it's like all of the things that I've taken, all the books I've read, all the retreats I've gone to, and you're just this living not just, but like you're this living breathing person that's like, yeah, all of that. And here's that other little like special sauce, because we talk about, you just completely read my mind about how we don't allow ourselves to express. We don't, and it's like, oh, well, can't be instant gratification, or don't show up too big, or don't support the way you really want to feel. Don't show up like that because you're too loud, you're too demure, you're too, whatever. And this goes for everybody. I know I keep tying it back to women specifically because I identify as one, but like so many people just live their lives inauthentically, and we go crazy because we are not our whole self. And that's when you get in that like midlife crisis of like, who am I? Where am I going? And you just tie that all together, and all of the, sorry about my dog, all of the, like I said, the personal development, the psychology that's been going on, you can know all the things, but if you're not outsourcing that to the rest of your body, only one part of you gets healing, which doesn't get the whole. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound that needs more treatment. So this, I really believe this is like that missing link. So question, I know when we talked whenever it was, I mentioned, one of my girlfriends works with fascia a lot, like that's her jam. And because you're holistically working, when you are doing the physical body work, when you are helping move people the way they want to move, are you feeling, because it is such a slow process, and for those of you who are like, what's fascia? It's that interconnective tissue, the spider web that literally touches every single thing inside your body, which surrounds the muscles. And in order for the muscles to relax, the fascia has to relax as well, right? So I'm just curious, when you are doing the body work, do you, because I'm sure at this point you're so gifted and being able to sense and really feel, because you've been trained like that, do you feel the fascia and then the muscle? Like, does one go before the other, or?
They're interconnected, and basically, what you just said is true, and it's true the other way around. So when you release the fascia, the muscle potentially can release. But if you release the muscle, the fascia also releases. So if you can imagine, like, there's a muscle in your shoulder that's tight. It's sore. It's hard to the touch. You could reach back and poke it and it's like, ow. Okay. Mm-hmm. Your brain is sending an impulse. Your nervous system is maintaining that contraction. That's why it's sore. That's why it's tight. That's why every time you turn your head, you get a kink, right? Because your brain is sending signals to that muscle to stay in contraction, which if you do, if that muscle is being maintained for, at varying degrees of tension, maybe you don't feel it all the time. You just feel it sometimes, right? When you're really stressed or you didn't sleep enough, right? But it's maintaining that contraction. Well, over time, the fascia is also going to get hard and stiff and tight in that area because the muscle fibers are clenched. They're not soft, they're clenched. And so the fascia between all those muscle fibers is also clenched. Now, you could break it up by pushing on it from the outside and breaking up the fascia, yes, but you wouldn't necessarily get your brain to completely stop what it's been doing. If it's been doing that, impulse to send signal to that muscle for 30 years, right, for example, right? Mm-hmm. You wouldn't necessarily get your brain to turn that off. It could relent a little bit. It could soften a little bit as your nervous system as a whole relaxes. If you find, like pressure, and massage relaxing. Some people do, some people don't. Some people don't actually find, intense pressure and massages relaxing. And those people don't really get relief from it because their brain does the opposite. Instead of relaxing the muscle, it tightens it. Mm-hmm. It activates their nervous system. They feel less safe when someone is pushing and squeezing them, right? Now, what you're doing when you do what I've described is you're getting that signal to stop firing. You're getting your brain to stop sending that impulse. So now the muscle relaxes from the inside. So what it would do is it would make any kind of fascial readjustment that you want made easier and more effective and more long lasting when your brain isn't sending signals to keep that muscle contracted. When that muscle's relaxed, it can heal, it can reform its fascia, it can get oxygen and nutrients and blood to it that it wasn't getting when your brain was maintaining it clenched. Does this make sense?
Perfect sense. And I just drew the perfect groomer analogy. Matting. When a dog is matted and that woolly sweater is pulling down on the skin, cutting off oxygen flow, cutting off blood supply, that's where the skin starts to die in a sense, in really extreme cases where it becomes really easy to tear when we're going through and shaving. So think about all of those awkward positions that we're putting ourselves in with poor grooming posture, which if you groom seniors in large breeds, that's kind of unavoidable. And then all of the life patterns and stuff like that, add to it past sports injuries and all of that. When you were talking, I'm 100% that person now. And I'm not upset about it, but it's kind of like, ugh, because I was a semi-professional athlete in a very high impact sport. And I was always going and getting massages going like, just punch me, just get in there. and of course they're always like, drink a lot of water afterward. And it would feel good initially, but then, I would feel like crap the next few days. And I know a lot of that, I knew a lot of that was from the lactic acid release and maybe not flushing all of that out, but I never thought that, hey, you're in high intensity mode all the time from sports and past traumas and everything. I never put the two together that like, it wasn't enough to just do that physical. Like my brain is like, cool, you did that. Now I got to put myself back in there and retighten because that's how I function.
Yes,
like
the retightening. Yes, the retightening. So this work is progressive because we're going against everything you just described, all of the muscle conditioning from sports. And for me, it was like yoga and locking my legs and back bends and all the things that I used to do that were pretty extreme, actually. If I look back on it, I'm like, whoa, I don't know if my body was actually happy about that. I mean, my ego definitely was like, my Instagram definitely was, but like, I'm not sure that like my lower back was actually cool with all that. You know what I mean? But we're going against those patterns that build up. And so it's a process when you first start releasing to actually get your brain to buy into the letting go of muscles, right? But the amazing thing is it can turn around pretty quickly, like with consistency that, within 3-4 sessions or even, like half a year, I will see people who, had something going on that they thought was just how their body was going to be for the rest of their life, right? Vanish. And it's amazing because your body wants to heal. Your body wants to, get better. It's about giving it the right stimulation and also the right like relaxation, lack of stimulation, right?
So yes. And one of the things I just want to kind of go back to with the yoga and everything. So I got into that later in life, not as early as you did, and more so as I'm getting older, especially of like mobility is king for as we're aging. Like that's why I put together healing groomer yoga, because as we age, yes, we want strength, but if we lose flexibility, that's where everything tightens, and that's where people get sick. And you see those old people shuffling because they're so tight. But I too was also a cheerleader, and so I was doing all the things. Like I remember I would do this one gymnastic move that would end in a split, and I would go with such momentum that I would hit the floor and bounce up and go again. And I just remember every time I was all like ego, right? I was like, ha 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 ha, yeah, because the crowd would be like, oh,
yeah.
And so I want to go back to tying that together with the key that you said is the slow movements, because that's the key to get your brain to go, because I was wondering, like, okay, how we were talking about doing the opposite. I want to like pull it open, right? But let's say we said, okay, you want to go that way, kind of take that same extreme, but go that way. It's still not going to work because now you're just shoving it further. You're not giving that neurological permission, right?
Well, you want to let it go. That's the
Yes.
whole idea here is
Okay.
you contract. You don't contract to contract. You've been doing that your whole life. That's what we do that all the time. We're contracting to release. And that's why these movements can be very gentle and very tiny, is we're contracting to release them.
It's like those chairs or like those armrests, right? Where you want to pull the armrest back in your car, but it won't go. You have to like notch it down one notch and then it'll release.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Just like that. Yes, totally. You know, and this is a part of your brain that already exists that you just didn't know about and you didn't know how to use it. So this is not like a kind of like a philosophy or a system. I mean, it is a philosophy, but like what we're talking about neurophysiologically here is like this way of moving already existed in your body. And so it's not in opposition to anything any more than like you breathing is in opposition to anything. It's not in opposition to yoga. It's not in opposition to like powerlifting. It's not in opposition to high intensity cardio. This is just a way of moving your body that helps you be able to do all those things, skydiving, you know, I don't know, all the things that people are into with less long-term impact on your body. When you're done doing that your brain actually knows how to unclench and let go of that back bend or the splits, right? And that it's not staying in a state of reaction and looping with that same pattern over and over.
And like you said, it really is, especially experiencing it when you get to see like, oh, it's like this. I feel like it becomes more of an instinctual thing, which you said, you know, we've done in the womb, because like I was in a car accident, and so I have back issues, and I'm just now realizing that one of the things my personal trainer had me doing, and one of the yoga instructors that I was working with, it was about the slow release. Like, we're going to go in that position. Doesn't have to be a big movement, but then slow. And I think I say instinctually because as we get older and we like find ourselves moving in a certain way, we're like, oh, I'm going to ease out of this chair this way. Like we automatically, and that's more, that is more pain induced versus healing induced, but kind of same, but different kind of.
Totally. Yes. Well, I mean, some people, if they can see me on camera, like you'll see people go like, you know, they're kind of like pulling on their head, or they're like doing these things, you know, they're like trying to adjust, right? Because there's something that's hurting. There's like a kink in their neck. There's a tightness and they want to like, you know, do something about it. That is their natural intelligence of their body trying to figure it out. There's something happening and I should be able to turn it off somehow, right? And what happens when you learn this technique is it's like, oh, there is a way to turn off exactly that spot. Let me move in such a way. Oh, it's right there, to slowly engage it and let it go. So it's like a sophisticated form of what we, you know, intuitively try to do to address the tension we're feeling in our body. You know, oh, there's a little kink in my elbow. Like, let me deal, you know, what if you could just go, oh, it's right there. And now I'm releasing it. Cats
Yeah.
and cats and dogs, if you watch them, you know, if they're not traumatized and in that hypervigilant state, they do it all the time and they do it beautifully. They do it like so, you know, in it. Like a cat, they will like their little toes and everything. They're just like getting right
Mhm.
into where they need to with their somatic intelligence, with their body awareness, addressing the discomfort that would otherwise build up in their body.
And one of the things that you said, and you definitely said it at the retreat, was just like, this goes with everything. Like you were just saying, like skydiving, mimosas, like whatever your lifestyle is. And I love that. It's almost like the way I've been thinking about it is a, a pre and post workout for whatever it is you're doing to just prepare your body like gently to
Yes.
get into it and then to gently come out of whatever extreme. So like you can still do extreme back bends and yoga and all that kind of stuff and
Right.
extreme sports and do your cool down stretchings, which are the long pulls, and then do these little movements.
Right.
And my favorite thing was when we were coming out of the exercise you did, and you said before you get up, your body's going to have this natural desire to do the morning stretch. Like it feels good. And you're like, resist that. Talk about
Just for a
that.
moment.
Yeah. No, but if you could talk about that, because you know we're working to retrain the brain and body in one way, and instinctually, because it's been a past pattern, we're like, this big stretch at the end would feel great. Why would we not want to do that?
Right. Well, we just did a whole lot of that. If you took a movement class with me, we just did like a contraction and slow release and a rest of muscles all over your body, but we did it using the voluntary motor cortex, meaning the part of your brain that learns and controls movement. And that is the only part of your brain that can actually change the length of your muscles internally. It doesn't happen through your autonomic nervous system unless you train it, which is what this practice does. You train your nervous system to relax, right? In that specific way. And how do you do that? Through the voluntary motor cortex, right? So we did it voluntarily, but then when you sit up, your body's like relaxed, like areas that were very tight, maybe for 10 years are like not tight. And it's actually a little disorienting. Your body's like, wait a minute, where's all that stuff that I'm used to carrying? You know, it's kind of like if you've been wearing a hat all day and you take the hat off, you're like, where's my hat? It feels like it's still on my head, right? So, what our body wants to do is reset our muscle tension, reset it back to that little bit higher place that it was when we started, because that's familiar, right? So, that's why I tell people don't let your autonomic nervous system pull you back into the old patterning. See if you can rest in this new configuration, even if it feels a little weird, even if it feels a little vulnerable, right? Because it often does, to not be carrying that, you know, like, I don't know, if we carry stuff like the victim mode thing that you talked about your mother-in-law having, or like, you know, these burdens of like responsibility, and we don't realize that like part of why they're there is they like make us feel like we have control over our lives. They make us feel like it's predictable and we know what's going to happen because, you know, my life is always like this, right? And when we release that and you're not carrying that narrative in your body, it's like, who am I then? What am I supposed to do here? How am I supposed to show up? And that can be scary, but as you can probably guess, having done lots of personal work, it's also like a place of like a lot of possibility and excitement. It's an opening that you don't have to carry all that around, you know, that you can be more authentic and more vulnerable and more real, you know? So it's this thing that's like, it's exciting and it's also scary.
So what would you say to somebody who, like, I could feel the triggers like coming up in the questions of like, who would feel, because we're comfortable in our discomfort, even if we don't consciously realize that, we are constantly self-sabotaging, because even though it's not what we don't want this reality, we don't want this income or having to deal with these kind of people all the time, or this, that, whatever. And yet it's what's comfortable, it's what's known. So we continue to perpetuate. So if somebody's like, yes, consciously, yes, I want that, but then there's saboteurs coming in going like, you don't want that. You don't want to be in that vulnerable place. You don't know what's going to happen from that. Let's stay safe. Let's stay comfortable in our discomfort because we know it. Yeah. What would you say to somebody who's got that going on?
I would say that you probably need some support. You probably don't want to do this alone. Meaning that was how it was for me. Like I couldn't, in the beginning, I couldn't do this alone. Like I tried, but I couldn't like really lay down and sense into my body and face the patterns and the pain that I was carrying by myself. I needed support. And so, you know, if you're feeling like, oh, it's too scary to go there, it's probably because at some point in your early childhood, there were experiences or things that were too scary to touch, that you didn't have your parent there being a calm, supportive, nurturing, present guide for that. Maybe instead you had a parent who was like scolding you and shaming you and making you feel bad about whatever happened, right? That you're internally struggling with. I mean, most of our parents probably did that. I mean, we're human, people make mistakes, you know what I mean? So there's a reparenting of yourself, and also like, you know, in relation to like someone else, perhaps, right? Like a parent figure that like is something that will help that resistance, that feeling of resistance. The other thing I want to say is I used to talk about self-sabotage, and now like the more that I've worked with people, I don't see it as self-sabotage. I see it as protection patterns, ways that we feel safe. We don't, you know, like you said, it's like, oh, I don't want to go to that vulnerable place. I don't want to, you know, feel those feelings that, you know, are uncomfortable. Okay, so what if we don't poke that painful spot? What if we let you have that resistance and we let you have that uncertainty, right? And instead, we just do what feels good right now for you, you know? And that might be, I've had some clients that we don't even do the movements the first time that we meet. We just let them kind of talk about it and sense into their body. And they just observe what comes up for them as they talk about things. Oh, I'm feeling this in my back. I'm feeling this in my shoulder, you know, and then I might invite them, do you want to do something about that? You know, and basically just, again, this idea of not forcing it, but going with whatever's showing up. So I would say to someone who's feeling like, oh, maybe this is going to be too intense for me. It might be too intense if you try to do it alone. It might be too intense if you don't have support, right? But if you're open to like letting someone else be there for you, right? It could change everything. And that's what it did for me. It really changed everything when I let other people like help me, and not just like instruct me and tell me what to do, but actually like help me help myself, help me feel, you know, feel like it was possible to make changes on my own.
And that's a lesson in and of itself. Like, we don't have to do things alone. And whether that support comes in the form of working with somebody like you, or going with a friend, or journaling or whatnot, like support can come in many different ways. And I think that's important to know, just for like all of the things. So before we wrap up, when I introduced you, I said, like, I think I'm still recovering from that. And I wanted to touch on that a little bit, because I don't want to dissuade anybody. I mean, recovering in terms of release, right? So we did what? It was
like probably like 15 or 20 minutes of actual movement.
Yeah. So it wasn't like a ton as what we would consider like, you know, an hour and a half Bikram yoga. Like, it wasn't like that. But I felt like crap the next day, and like releasing, body doesn't know what to do with it. And then I had a really intense work week this past week with come here. Sorry, the barker is about to go on a roll chasing the cat. I had a really intense work week with, I just had like back-to-back new fees, and I worked super, super late because I'm booked out. And so I was like, well, I have no place to reschedule you. So I was just putting my body through more physical stress on top of where I'd already released. And so my body's kind of going, ah. And now I've got this thing going on here. And it's very much a way of the body, I think, from what I know and what I've worked with you on. Sorry, I can't take the chaos over here. When I did really intense personal development, this is the thing I can relate it to that maybe people understand, talking about that vulnerability and that scare. And back when I was I had a hiatus in my grooming career. I did my personal development, fell in love with myself, decided I wanted to help other people do the same. So I became a personal development, self-love coach. That was very successful, too quickly, short-lived. I got burned out because I didn't have a special focus. which is why I do things differently the way I do them now. But all of that to say, I used to dissuade people from going into it because I'm like, I don't want to work with you if you're not ready for the aftermath. Because once you open up these areas in order to heal, it really is like darkest before the dawn. Like in that place of vulnerability, I cried for like 2 months straight. All of a sudden, and I was living in Nevada at the time as well. And I was like, all of a sudden, I didn't see the nice things that I would look at when I would drive on the strip. All I would see was like trash and homeless people, and I would just feel bad for them. It was just like I was heightened in this. Ugh. But obviously, I came out of it on the other side, and things were so much more beautiful. And so when your body and your brain, like if you've done any personal development work, you can relate to this, to people who are listening. You do make a pendulum swing, right?
Yes.
And you have to be, because a lot of people go into any kind of healing therapy, physical therapy, whatever, they go into like with the I want to feel better. And when they start to feel either a little bit of feeling better, then they're like, I don't need this anymore, I'm good. And or they start to feel a little better, but then they get that aftermath, that lactic acid buildup or that vulnerability. And then they're like, this is terrifying. I don't want to do it because this is that place, like you were saying, like, don't go there. I don't want to touch it. I don't want to open up that door, and I don't want to know what's like. One of my past things was I had an inkling that something had happened to me as a child, and I was terrified to open that door. And so I let my inner child run the show of like all the other things. And what I basically got out of it was I can still let her keep that door closed. I don't have to benefit from knowing exactly what happened. We can just have this internal covenant of like, you guard that, but let me take the wheel on everything else. And I say this wonky tangent to just kind of give people the heads up of like, 2 steps forward, 3 steps back in life and healing. Like you were talking about that. Like I take the scenic route in life for sure.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And it's part of the process, and it is worth going through, whether you have support in the form of a mentor, a friend, a coworker, a somatic healer like yourself, which what's really cool about you is a lot of people I interview, they're like specific to Buffalo, but you are kind of nomadic and can work with people wherever. So finding someone, I don't have to say like you, I could say just getting in touch with you is great. And I really encourage people wherever you are on your journey to consider this, because I don't say I'm recovering from our session as like, I'm a mess or I feel like crap.
Yeah.
I say it in a positive light of like, I knew I was going to probably have some residual release.
Yes.
And I just want to give people that heads up, like,
totally.
Don't be deterred by that. That is your body getting rid of what it's been holding on to.
Totally. And I'll say that also, what I've discovered is that everybody's different, and some people have more visceral reactions than others. Some people have repressed memories, and in doing this work, those repressed memories come to light, and that emotion and that stuff releases, and it's a positive thing, but they need support around it. Like you said, a friend, or I had one woman who was doing, she did 10 sessions with me consecutively for 10 weeks while she was doing EMDR and plant medicine with her psychologist, with her therapist. And she had like a life-changing breakthrough where she faced some repressed memories, and got really clear on them, but she felt like it accelerated the process of dealing with that, so, and that's like one person that I've worked with. The vast majority of people, I would say, don't have that kind of dramatic reaction, right? But the things that I would say about what happened with you that would have made it more comfortable for your body is if we had actually done a longer session, because I think we left, like afterwards you were kind of like noticing places that were still holding in your body, right? Mm-hmm. If we'd actually worked with more of your whole body and addressed more of your specific clenching patterns as you are such a physical person, I think you would have had less difficulty in the aftermath. It would have been like there would have been more clarity, like more settled in your body, rather than kind of leaving these unmet things going on that had to figure out how to sort themselves. The other thing would be like giving yourself time to rest deeply afterwards, meaning,
Like I didn't like
like, yeah, like literally being like, okay, after this like session, I'm going to take the rest of the day off. I'm going to take it easy the following day. And I'm going to make time where I don't have to show up and like meet life's demands in the same way, because I'm going to give myself that space to let my body like come out of the stress. So those are some things that would have made your process maybe a little easier. But
I completely agree. And it's again drawing a parallel. Something that I've like instinctually thought about, but never gave myself permission to do until I got with my significant other. And he's like, no, no, no. Every vacation, however long we're planning on being gone for, including travel days, add another day. Because
yay, I love that.
like you come home from the vacation, you're like, oh, rested, and then like, and you traveled all Sunday and then Monday back to work, like that sucks. And so
Yeah.
now it's like, okay, no, just one more day is not really going to kill you. It's not going to kill the bank account. Like you need it. So whether it means cutting your vacation short one day, if you have to account for that, like same thing for your healing experiences, like design your day. Just like if you get the opportunity to design your schedule, like you're not going to groom 3 small dogs and then a Newfoundland at the end of your day. You're going to be exhausted. You're going to fall asleep halfway through the last groom, you know, so you set it up, or your muscles are just going to give out. And you're like, well, you're half brushed and that's that. So like setting yourself up for success, whether it's nighttime routines, morning routines, all these other things that you and I could have like 8 million more hours of conversations about, I'm sure. With planning that, I think is super, super important. So like, when you decide to work with Aimee or any other kind of healing support, plan that, like you said, like definitely take the rest of the day off, take a couple days, especially if this is a new journey for you, plan for extra. And then if you feel good enough to like get back into the swing of things, by all means, permission granted. So with that said, how can people find you regardless of where they are? Tell us about, I know you've got some upcoming retreats that are really exciting, that are not local. They're going to be on the other side of the country. So like, how can people find you and what's going on with you?
Yes. So you can find me at freeyoursoma.com. I also have a podcast, Free Your Soma, which is on Spotify and all the platforms. It also is on YouTube. There's the video of the podcast on YouTube, Aimee Takaya. That's also my handle on Instagram. I'm very responsive. If you email me or message me, I will get back to you. And I have a couple of retreats that are coming up. I do actually have one in New York that's going to be in June, in Niagara Falls. So that one, I haven't released all the info for, but it is on my website if you go to retreats and events. And then I have one coming up in April in Murrieta Hot Springs in California. And that one is very much a bodywork based retreat. And what we do is we do the HANA somatic education, hands-on practice, immediately followed by water release therapy, or Watsu, which is like a warm water pool, very passive, where the practitioner moves you in the water to help release, emotional energy, to release tension in your body. So basically the neuromuscular reset gets more integrated through the water release therapy. And that's a brand that we're creating called Flow Your Soma, right? So my business is Free Your Soma. And then we have Flow Your Soma, and we just did one in the Cayman Islands.
I was just going to say, is that what I saw from the Cayman Islands? Yeah.
Yes. And so we're going to be doing probably a couple of domestic retreats a year and then 1 or 2 international. That's our plan right now. So those retreats are extra special because you're getting that space to integrate. You're not just immediately going back into your daily life when you go on one of these retreats. You have a beautiful hot spring to rest at. You have time away from your daily grind where you can journal, you can write, you can lay in the grass and just look at the clouds and integrate more deeply the changes that you're making. So happy to share more about that with anybody who's interested. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Like what you do is such a blessing and a gift to anyone who is lucky enough to come across your path. And for those of you who are like, retreat? What is that? That means like vacation? I don't know. You're talking to a very high functional, neurodivergent bundle of stress. Like we joke around, like hairstylists, we survive on caffeine and maybe a granola bar, like half a bite or something. Like that's how we go through our days. So we need you. And hey, if you are tying this in with your business, groomer business owners, this could potentially, talk to your accountant, this could potentially be a write-off. So you could actually take yourself on a vacation retreat that is for you if you can get a really good accountant that's like, yeah, this prolongs the longevity of your profession. And I know I've been wanting to create a retreat myself. So you and I should talk offline about
Yeah.
to sync that so that I can really help y'all make it a write-off, because we're talking about grooming stuff too. So
right. Grooming stuff, bring your doggy if you have one, right? That'd be cool.
Oh, that'd be so much fun. Okay, so lots of things to talk about. Aimee, thank you so much for being here. You're such a delight. Like, I mean that, like, what you do is such a blessing, and we all need more of you. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right. Until next time, y'all. I will come up with a tagline sometime, I swear, but I don't have one. So have a great day. Go forward. Do your thing. Whoa. How good was that episode? What are some takeaways that really stood out to you that you can implement in your business or your day-to-day life right now, today? Leave a comment below and let me know. Better yet, take a screenshot, tag Positively Unleashed, and one friend that you think can benefit from this episode for a chance to win prizes and more.